Okay, this problem is a continuation as it uses the same four expressions. In this case, though, it's an equation set equal to 0. The main idea in this problem is this equation here. A times B is equal to 0. And it explains this thing called the zero product property. But let's think about this. Try to think of two numbers that you could multiply together to give 0. Here's an example. 5 times 0, that equals 0. 18 times 0, that equals 0. Negative 14.5 times 0, that equals 0. If one of them is 0, the other one can be anything, and the product is going to be 0. Likewise, we could do 6.8 for B and 0 for A. 0 times 6.8 is 0. 54.6 for B and 0 for A. Again, the product is 0. But is it possible to think of an example where neither A nor B is 0 and the product is 0? No. The point is, when you have an equation that says two things are being multiplied together to be 0, the only way that can be true is either A has to be 0 or B has to be 0 or both. That's the only way to make this true. Okay, so the idea is when you have A times B equals 0, we know one of the solutions is that A has to be equal to 0, and the other solution, it could be that B is equal to 0. Either one is going to make it true. If A is 0, the whole thing's true, and if B is 0, the whole thing's true. We're going to apply that principle to these four examples. Now, this is hard to understand for a lot of students, so try to think of it, try to pay attention, and let's just go ahead and do this. We have x squared plus 4x is equal to 0. Okay. First, we do not have a situation where we have A times B equals 0. We have a situation where we have something plus something else equals 0. Not an example of this up here. But if we factor this, let's factor this. We factor out an x, and we have x times the quantity x plus 4 is equal to 0. Now we do have an instance of A times B equals 0. We have x times this thing, x plus 4, is equal to 0. And because now we have that two things are being multiplied together to equal 0, the only way to make that true is either this part has to be 0. So one of the solutions is x is equal to 0. That will make it true. And the other way to make this true is if the second part is equal to 0. X plus 4 is equal to 0. So we set that equal to 0. So to make this equation true, and then in turn to make this equation true, either x can be 0 or x plus 4 has to equal 0, and then x has to equal negative 4 if you subtract 4 on both sides. So here are the two solutions to this equation. There are two. Either x equals 0 or x equals negative 4. You can test them up here. If you put in x is 0, 0 squared is 0, plus 4 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0. That does make this equation true. Negative 4 also works. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. 4 times negative 4 is negative 16, and 16 plus negative 16 is indeed 0. So you see these two values, 0 and negative 4, make this true. And we use the zero product property to help us do that. Let's do it again. 2x squared minus 6x equals 0. First thing we're going to do is factor this. 2x times the quantity x minus 3 equals 0. Now we have a situation where we have 2x times this thing equaling 0. The only way to make this true is if either the first part equals 0 or the second part equals 0. Then we have, something times 0 equals 0. So either 2x equals 0, we split it into two pieces. 2x equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. Solve each one of these separately. You get divide by 2 on both sides here, add 3 on both sides here. So apparently the two solutions are 0 and 3. And you can test them up here. Both 0 and 3 will satisfy this equation. Coming down here, 3x squared minus 15x equals 0. First, we factor out a 3x. We have 3x times the quantity x minus 5. So now we have two things being multiplied together to give 0. The only way to make this equation true is if either 3x equals 0 by itself or x minus 5 equals 0 by itself. Solving this equation, divide both sides by 3, we get that x is equal to 0. Add 5 to both sides of the equation here, and we get that x equals 5. So either 0 or 5 will make this equation true. Again, it has 2. And down here, we have negative 2x squared minus 7x equals 0. Again, we factor it out. X times this quantity. Now we have two things being multiplied together. X times this equals 0. So either x is equal to 0 or negative 2x minus 7 is equal to 0. Solving this equation by adding 7 to both sides and then dividing by negative 2, we get that the other solution is x is equal to negative 3.5. So either x equals 0 or x equals negative 3.5. Either of those values will satisfy this equation, and those are the only two values. So there you have it.